Hi, my name is Daniel. Today I'll be interviewing Greg. Before we get started, do you consent to being interviewed on camera for the entirety of the interview?
Yes.
Okay. Well, can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name is Greg. I work for the organizing corps, and I help volunteer and provide my time to help people register to vote, as well as phone bank, and try to get more people to come join either come join the organizing corps or help the volunteer for the Broward Democratic Party.
Okay. Well, what inspired you to be a social justice advocate?
My beginning as a social justice advocate came from kind of analyzing and looking and reading other people be kind of online social justice advocates. And I kind of realized that if those people can change the way that I think, then maybe I can change the way that other people think simply by just speaking and being me and talking about the things that I'm passionate about. So,
Okay. Well, what does social justice mean to you?
for me, social justice always has to be kind of restorative. It must affect the materialistic conditions of people, or else it is really not social justice, in my opinion. I do know that a lot of people, kind of abuse the word social justice to, kind of throw it around loosely, but I think there should be a base understanding that social justice is about actually helping people and actually doing something, not just speaking about it. Sometimes speaking about it can do, a bit of the work, 50% of the work, which is convincing people that this is an issue that needs to be acknowledged and helped or contributed to. But the other 50% is the actual work that goes into it. So like national bailouts and bailing out people so that they can see their children, or bailing out mothers who've been falsely imprisoned or unfairly imprisoned for misdemeanors and things like that. So,
Okay. Do you think that the LGBT movement is the modern day equivalent to the civil rights movement of 1950s America?
well, the short answer would be yes, and the long answer would be the way that this question is poised makes me think that these things are completely separate. And although they came at different times, I think it's important to acknowledge that this day and age that sometimes these issues are kind of inextricably tied together. So it's very important that we acknowledge that there's a tying together of these two things, and that the fight for both of these things kind of never really stops.
Okay. Do you think that the Loving versus Virginia Supreme Court case that allowed interracial marriage in America influenced and paved the way for the same-sex marriage ruling in 2015?
Yes, because at the time we kind of were not as much of a, great society that we are right now, where we kind of just took things one step at a time. But I do think that may have paved the way for that, ruling, but it should have maybe paved the way for a lot more. And sometimes I would like to say that I'm kind of disappointed with our progress, because if we had that done in maybe I'm guessing around the 50s, then we should have been at a point where we should have already legalized gay marriage, and it shouldn't be always something that we kind of reference that happened in recent history. It should have been something that can be referenced, in the time, maybe the 60s, maybe the 80s, something like that. But there's still a lot more work to do. So,
Okay. Do you think that same-sex marriage being legalized ends all problems for LGBT people in America?
no, because although same-sex marriage was legalized, it's still legal for jobs to discriminate against you if you are gay. It is still legal for jobs to discriminate against you if you are transgender. As you know, we had this whole big bathroom debate, as well as it's also extremely difficult for transgender individuals to change their name legally. There have been multiple stories where a transgender individual can actually stand in an office where the equality sign is above the doorway and have an extremely difficult time simply changing one thing about themselves, whether it be because of bureaucracy and red tape, or whether it be because some judges are actually just harsh like that. And I do think that we kind of need to look deep and maybe get a lot of these things changed, because this is really unfair for a lot of transgender individuals.
Do you feel that the civil rights and LGBT rights are connected?
I do think that they're inextricably connected. I think that one kind of set the groundwork for the other, but it's important to acknowledge that a lot of people who belong to the minority that we fought for in the civil rights movement also belong to the LGBTQ minority group. So it's important that we don't leave those people out, because the things get a lot more complicated when you belong to more than one minority.
Some opponents might say that gay people or LGBT people have had a sort of privilege over people of color, in the sense that you can't hide your race or your skin color, but you can hide your identity. What would you say to that?
Well, to those people who pose that, I would think about all of the feminine gay men that they see who can't really hide that, and think about the men that existed in that time who couldn't really hide that, and were kind of had glowing red targets on their back, because not only because they were black, but also because they were gay and also super feminine. A lot of men couldn't hide that, and that kind of put them in danger. And so they created their own communities, and they created their own, secluded little spaces to be able to be themselves, because things were really dangerous for them when you happen to be black and queer or gay.
Okay. Do you feel that all LGBT rights and civil rights have been achieved?
I don't think that all LGBTQ rights have been achieved, as well as not all civil rights have been achieved, because we still have black people being unfairly imprisoned. We still have black people being abused for their labor in prisons. We still have the ability for transgender women to be able to be, transgender women are still attacked on the streets. Transgender women are shot and killed in the street in broad daylight, simply for being transgender women, because they somehow, people who don't belong to that minority have been fed a lie that transgender women simply exist to trick people into thinking that they're women, when there is no trick, and transgender women will always be women.
How can we make LGBT rights more accessible to the average American?
The beginning is always about listening, and the next step should be diversifying who you hang around and diversifying who you're friends with, because you kind of never really step out of your experience unless you have someone in your life that is outside of your experience. As well as donating and helping women in need, especially transgender women in need, is always something that you should be hopefully doing, although it may be difficult if you don't actually know any transgender women in your life. But there are plenty of organizations that you can donate to, organizations that actually really do help people, that you can find by just simply doing a simple Google search. And if you're kind of in a position of power, maybe if you're a lawyer, donating your legal services to people who need them, who cannot pay for them, would actually be quite the great boon.
And what can the average American do to help the LGBT rights progress?
The average American can always try donating. Donating is just kind of the biggest way to be able to help. And so donating and being there for your friends. If your friend belongs to a specific minority, it's super important that you are there for them psychologically, because there will be a time where they need you, and there will be a time where they will not forget that you were not there for them.
Okay, do you have any last minute comments?
No, I think it's important that we donate and that we give our time. And time is such an important and valuable resource, and not a lot of people have it to invoke change. So anytime that you can put into it, or put into these movements, then it's time that you definitely were not wasting.
All right, thank you.